We're shaking up Washington, D.C. We're breaking the fever.
You ever watch this guy on television? It's like a machine. He's great. Matt Gaetz.
Happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone. Tonight I have fresh reporting from my sources in El Salvador following the transfer of 238 Tren de Aragua terrorists from the United States to the Central American country. More happened on that plane ride than you've heard. But first, why El Salvador? Well, when you want security, you go to the experts. And El Salvador now has the lowest murder rate in the Western Hemisphere after having previously been the murder capital of the world. El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele built a massive prison called Sacat. I've been there, and I can assure you, no one is getting out via escape. If we send Tren de Aragua to Venezuela, there's a good chance they'd be back on our soil. We don't have to worry about that with those who enter the Salvadorian prison, Sacat. So here's my news. My sources have informed me that the Venezuelan terrorists actually tried to take over one of the planes transporting them to Central America. They fought on the planes, they resisted movements, all until they got to the plane's threshold and saw what was waiting for them. When they saw the Salvadorian show of force in San Salvador, the fight just drained right out of them. And these are some pretty bad hombres. Tren de Aragua is a Venezuelan criminal organization that originated within the country's prison system. Over time, it expanded its operations beyond Venezuela, engaging in activities such as drug trafficking, extortion, kidnapping, human smuggling. In recent years, reports have indicated that the gang has a really strong presence throughout America, including in Aurora, Colorado, where the country witnessed Tren de Aragua taking over apartment complexes. In response to the threat posed by Tren de Aragua, the United States government took decisive action. On Saturday, President Trump invoked the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, a law that grants presidential authority to detain and deport nationals of hostile countries during times of war or invasion. This act was historically used during World War II, but had not been applied in recent decades. And we had President Trump issue the executive order on his first day of office, declaring what was happening on the southern border an invasion. And now he's utilizing the tools that unlocks. So following the invocation of this act, the United States government arranged for the deportation. An agreement was reached with El Salvador to house these individuals in the country's high-security prison facilities. The deportation process faced legal challenges, though. U.S. District Court Judge James Bosenberg issued a temporary restraining order blocking the deportations, questioning the applicability of the Alien Enemies Act in this context as well. Now, despite this order, the deportation flights proceeded, with administration officials arguing that the flights had already departed U.S. airspace before the written order was issued. There's a lot to unpack there, and we've got exactly the show to do it. Now, the deportations have elicited varied reactions. The Venezuelan government condemned the United States. They labeled this a violation of human rights, as if Venezuela really cares about human rights. They're using currency as toilet paper in Venezuela, but they want to lecture us about human rights after they exported their criminals here to our country. Venezuela has called upon international organizations to oppose this precedent, expressing concern about the treatment of their nationals. They didn't offer to take them back, though. Like, if Venezuela was so worried about them, maybe they should have just kept them. Domestically, human rights organizations have criticized the use of the Alien Enemies Act, arguing that it bypasses due process and sets a concerning precedent for the treatment of non-citizens. We love the precedent it sets. Legal experts have debated the constitutionality of applying this 18th century law in modern times, and we will discuss that tonight. Joining us now is Arizona Congressman and candidate for governor Andy Biggs. Andy, you and I have been to the exact prison that the Tren de Aragua gang members were sent to over the weekend. You and I met with President Nayib Bukele before President Trump was elected to his second term, and Bukele said he would be eager to be a security partner for criminal illegal aliens. But at the time, of course, we had Joe Biden in the White House, and there wasn't much interest in Bukele's offer. Now it's been taken. What's your reaction to these deportation flights?
I think it's fantastic. As you know, that is an isolated facility. It has got maximum security. And as we discussed with the warden there, they have never had a single incident of violence there. It's well managed and it's appropriate. And so I tip my hat to President Bukele and President Trump for working out this arrangement.
We have seen criticism come in aimed at President Trump over his use of the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. I think that's a perfect use of the law. What's your take?
Absolutely. That act was never rescinded. It's still active and in force. And if it is, it's a tool that we need because the Biden administration, let's just call it what it is. The Biden administration overran this country, and Donald Trump is having to fix what Biden broke. And I think it's a tool in the toolbox, and you got to use it.
Do you think we should use it going forward to send even more criminal illegal aliens to Sacat and El Salvador?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you know that it is quite a place there, and they have room, and it is well guarded by the Salvadoran military and police. And when you have criminals here, we don't want those criminals in the United States. We want to protect our citizens. And President Bukele has said that he is willing to take them. And by golly, we need to protect our citizens. He's got the facilities, and let's utilize them.
As I was talking to President Bukele about the opportunities to have this type of security partnership, he said, "Oh, Matt, those judges in the United States, they'll never let you do it." And lo and behold, we saw a federal judge literally try to turn the planes around in the air and get them back to the United States. That did not happen. The planes landed. The 238 gang member terrorists are now at Sacat. But what do you make of the effort at judicial intervention in these deportations?
Well, I mean, this is what you're seeing in every case right now on any part of the Trump agenda. It's the radical leftist judges that are activists. They've been there before in the 60s and 70s. They're trying to do now what they couldn't do by election. And that's what they're doing. They're trying to legislate from the bench and control the country. And quite frankly, some of them have gone well beyond just judicial bad decisions. They're actually trying to intervene and impose their will on the American people. And that's something that Congress really has to look at very carefully and take action on, in my opinion.
Expelling an invading force of terrorists and gang members does not require judicial review. Like, we are way past Marbury versus Madison. If you've got judges wanting to get it, what's next? If we go to war with China, are judges going to be telling us when we can fire and when we can't? And how to do espionage stuff? To me, it's crazy that they were allowed to do this. Now, there's some kerfluffle over the TikTok of this. There was one perspective that, in fact, the Trump administration could have complied with this order if they wanted to. They could have not had the last plane take off. They could have turned the planes around in the air. But as I see it, those planes went and landed and did exactly what they should. It could be argued that this was the first violation of a court order by the Trump administration. If so, do you think there'll be others?
Yeah, but I'm not sure that they did violate the court order, if you want the truth. But beyond that, this is part of the problem. The judicial branch was always meant to be the weakest branch, but they're now trying to intercede and be the strongest branch. They're trying to control Congress, and they're trying to control the executive branch. And quite frankly, you remember Andrew Jackson? He kind of had it this way. He said, yeah, the Supreme Court's made its ruling. Now let's see them enforce it. And he said it because he knew that they were supposed to be the weakest branch. What needs to happen, in my opinion, is the legislative branch, which is supposed to be the strongest branch, must now protect issues that we agree on with the executive branch against the judicial branch. And that sounds kind of wild, but that is why you have three separate branches of government that are not co-equal, but have certain responsibilities and also certain checks against the other branches. And we have the biggest checks of all in the legislative branch, and we should be utilizing them to protect the country that Joe Biden, using his misusing his executive authority. You talk about a guy who was violating the law, a CBP One app, the Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, Venezuela, all of those programs, those violated the law. And we couldn't get, and they went around them. They don't talk to me about executive branch violating judiciary commands when you have these same people in the media said, hey, you know what? Just because the court has said that you cannot give back, rebates on the student loans or however they were structuring that, they didn't care. They flat out did not care. And I'm just saying, if you want to bring back and restore equilibrium with the checks and balances, then the legislative branch has to get involved to temper what the judicial branch is trying to do to the executive orders that are complicit with the laws of the land.
Well, you're limited in your tools to do that. Because the Congress has shown during your time there and mine that it is incapable of utilizing the power of the purse. It just governs by omnibus bill and continuing resolution. So the only other tool you have is impeachment. You serve on the Judiciary Committee. I have seen Congressman Crane, Congressman Ogles, Congressman Gill out there filing articles of impeachment against the judges that are abusing their power. Do you think the Judiciary Committee will have a hearing on that?
I hope we do. I think there are members of our committee that agree that the judicial branch has gone amok, and there needs to be some example brought back in. But a lot of people say, well, you can't just do it over one incident. But here's what you have. You have an abuse of power, which is, in my opinion, is an impeachable offense. It falls under the other crimes and misdemeanors. It is an abuse of power, and you're seeing it. But some of these have aggregated a lot of long, as Jefferson would say in the Declaration of Independence, a long train of abuses. And so they need to have all of those brought back, incorporated into the impeachment document that they bring forth. And then I think we can actually make a legitimate argument that some of them need to lose their so-called lifetime status. But I'll just say one last thing, Matt. The Constitution doesn't say they get lifetime status. It says during period of good conduct, and they're not actually conducting themselves goodly, or properly.
You're running for governor of Arizona. The legislature is putting its budget together now to send to Governor Hobbs. What do you think the biggest mistake is in the state budget in Arizona right now?
The biggest mistake is that we're going to spend too much money overall. So you're going to see money that's going to individual, let's just call them special interests, Matt. And that's where we always need to step on that a little bit. I know that my colleagues are working at it. I wrote budgets for Arizona, and I will tell you this. Sometimes it's harder to write a budget when you have a surplus of revenue than it is when things are tight. And we have a surplus of revenue, which means everybody and their dog wants a bite at that apple.
Yeah, that was similar in Florida. When I was there, the big fight was, how are we going to spend all of the new money we weren't expecting? And people can have very strong appetites for that. And we know that you're one of the great fiscal hawks and would do so in the governor's mansion as well. Andy Biggs, thank you so much for being with us. Stay safe on the trail, okay?
Thanks, Matt. Good to see you always.